So there I was, slinging drinks at Smokey's Pub, just another day in the life of a broke college student trying to make rent. My name's Alex, by the way. Not that it matters, but people seem to like to know these things. This one Tuesday, this lady, let's call her Corinne, because it's always a Karen, right? Comes in and immediately starts eyeballing me like I just ran over her cat. I'm thinking, great, another high-maintenance customer. Little did I know, this was going to be one for the books. Karen orders a mocha frappuccino or some fancy crap like that. So I whip it up, thinking I've nailed it because, it's a coffee shop, and coffee is basically my lifeblood at this point. I hand it to her with my best customer. Service smile, and what does she do? She scoffs and goes, "There's something wrong with this. I can just feel it." Now, normally, I'd be chill about it. Customer's always right? But Karen wasn't having any of it. She shoves the cup back into my hands like I just handed her a cup of melted crayons. I give her the benefit of the doubt, make her another one. Maybe I screwed up. Who knows? Hand it over with the hope this is better. She takes a sip, looks me dead in the eyes and goes, "Are you trying to poison me? There's something in here, I'm telling you." At this point, I'm thinking she's lost her marbles. I check the drink, nothing. I taste it myself just to be sure. It's a damn good frappuccino if I do say so myself. I'm not sure what you're talking about. It's fine, I say, trying to keep my cool. But Karen ain't having it. She demands I make her another one. So here I am on round 3 of the most high-stakes frappuccino of my life. I even let the manager taste it. He gives me the nod, like, "You're good, dude." I present it to Karen with all the grace of a gymnast, and she looks at it like it just insulted her ancestors. Before she can say anything, I notice this little smirk on her face, like she's got some grand revelation. And then she points to the top of the cup and goes, "There, right there. What's that?" I'm looking, squinting, trying to figure out what the hell she's talking about. And then I see it, a tiny piece of coconut. Coconut in a frappuccino? Who does that? Now I get it. Some people have allergies. But Karen didn't have an allergy. She just had an attitude. I'm trying to explain this to her, but she ain't having it. "You're trying to kill me." "I knew it," she screeches, and before I can blink, she pokes me right in the eye. My freaking eye! I'm holding my eye half blinded, and she's still going on about how I'm the worst barista in the world. Meanwhile, half the pub is watching this drama go down. But here's the thing about me. I'm not one to take things lying down. I stumble to the back, holding my throbbing eye, and grab my phone. My eyes tearing up like crazy, but I managed to dial 911. 911? What's your emergency? The dispatcher asks. I'm like, yeah, so there's this lady at the pub. She poked me in the eye because she found coconut in her frappuccino. Can you believe it? Coconut? The dispatcher is surprisingly calm about it, probably dealing with weirder stuff every day. They send a cop over, and by this time, Karen has moved from yelling at me to yelling at everyone about the coconut conspiracy. The cop arrives, takes statements, and even he's looking at Karen like she's a few fries short of a happy meal. Eventually, they haul her off, and I'm left nursing my wounded eye, thinking, all this over coconut. Word gets around the pub about the coconut incident, and soon I'm getting high. Fives from regulars and sympathetic pats on the back from coworkers. Even the manager, who witnessed the whole thing, gives me a bonus for having to deal with Psycho Coconut Lady. A few years back, I was moving into a new apartment with a coworker of mine. He was an okay roommate. Good guy overall, just did some bad things. Not the focus of the story, though. Anyway, so as we move in, they give us the inventory of the apartment so we can mark everything that's wrong with it. They tell us they just had the carpets replaced 18 days earlier, and that the maintenance crew had also replaced the stove and bathtub. Yay, for us, right? So we went through and started marking stuff. I'm a bit anal retentive about this stuff, so I marked every little mark, ding, scratch, etc. in the place. In this allegedly new grayish carpet, you know the type that will quickly stain when the sun shines on it. There were 3 smallish stains on it, all off yellow, 1 in the living room, 1 in my room, and 1 in my roommate's room. We marked this down and made sure we were as specific as later. We then finished up, turned the inventory in, went over it with the leasing agent who signed that it was accurate, and we were good to go. I move in with my pup, and my roommate moves in with his cat. Fast forward 14 months, I'm moving out to move in with a couple other friends, and we are getting ready to clean and whatnot when who shows up but Karen, the leasing agent for the pre-inspection. I was at work at the time, but my girlfriend was there. Apparently, Karen walks in down the hallway, says, "Oh yes, carpet," and then walks out. She'd been in the apartment less than a minute. Now, even though we were guys and not super clean freaks, we did maintain an overall clean environment, according to my GF. So her saying that was weird. We figured we were okay. Yeah, stupid us. We moved out and on our separate ways. I got a bill in the mail 3 weeks after moving out for $1,400 for carpet replacement and other random cleaning things. Now, some of those things were completely on me or my roommate because, one, my roommate got attacked one night about a week or two before we moved out, so he did no cleaning whatsoever. My GF and I did our best, but we figured we'd get dinged a little, but not the full $500 deposit and then an extra $1,400. I sit down with the Karen's boss, Super Witch, and ask basically, what the heck? They brought up the 3 stains and said they were made either by my dog or Roomy's cat. They also said the inventory on our first day that Karen signed was invalid because I was too thorough for it to be true, and the carpet was brand new. I basically said, that's nonsense and I'm not paying for it. So Super Witch sent it to collections. I fought it for a year with the collection agency and got nowhere. It took my credit score from around a 750 to a 650. Needless to say, I was exhausted from my high-stress job from fighting this, and I was just ready to just pay it to be done. Until the best girlfriend in the world pointed out that I should just sue them. So I did. I sued the apartment complex for $7,500, the max I could sue in small claims without needing to get a lawyer involved. I couldn't afford one. I had the sheriff's dep deliver the lawsuit paperwork to the apartment complex's parent company and had a court date set. I was scared as I had never done this kind of thing before. I prepped what little evidence I had and went to court. The Honorable Judge Awesome Michael Wamasauce was presiding that day, and when my case was called, I went up with my evidence, and the apartment complex was nowhere to be found. So Judge Awesome asked me why I was suing for such a large amount. I explained the whole situation, showed that I had the inventory with their signature that clearly said both parties agreed that there were stains on the carpet prior to my move-in, and therefore I didn't think it was fair. I had to pay for the carpet, but I was willing to pay what I knew I owed if they would just remove my bill from collections. I also said I'd called in sick from the anxiety of dealing with this a few times over the last year, and I was currently missing work to be in court that day. And while I didn't expect to get $7,500, I wanted to get their attention and stick it to them because they can't just treat people like this. Judge Awesome listened and smiled and said something along the lines of, well, since they aren't here, I will give you a summary judgment, which means you win, and not only do you not have to pay for the carpet, but you can have your full deposit back. I wanted to start dancing, but I'm in court and a terrible dancer, so I didn't. He gave me my full deposit back plus the few days of work I missed, even though I said I got sick, pay for it. All in all, it was about $1,500, and he ordered that they remove it from my credit and take it from collections. I called them up and told them that I had sued them today and won. Super Witch said, "Oh, well, we had a mix-up and our lawyers forgot to show up, but would you still like to pay your bill?" I laughed at her and said, "Hell no," and hung up. They tried to not pay initially, so I sent them a letter with the judge's judgment and said I would put a line on the company if they didn't pay up. So I got a check about a week later. Basically, take photos, get copies, and never just pay the bill if you don't actually owe it. It is worth fighting in court if it's truly not on you. I am a dry liner, which means I do a lot of moving around for my trade as most of the work I do is towards the end of most projects. This means that I spend a lot of my time renting flats and houses for only short periods, usually about 6 months at a time. This has meant that I've had to deal with a lot of landlords over the years, both good and bad. When it comes to the bad landlords, I will normally just walk away and get on with moving to the next job and take the loss of my deposit and never use them again if I'm working in that area in the future. But this particular landlord got my back up so badly I was not just going to just walk away. I had managed to get myself onto a big job in London working on the new Wembley Stadium. So I decided I would look for a house to rent rather than a flat, as I know I was going to be working on it for a while and found a reasonably priced, for London, house to rent from a private landlord in a local newspaper. I gave him a call and met with him later that day. He seemed okay. I went to view the house, paid him the deposit, cash, and moved in that weekend. I ended up staying in the house for nearly a year with no problems, always had the rent paid into his bank account on time, and fixed any small problems that might crop with the house myself without bothering him. Up to the time when it came to moving out, I only ever spoke to him twice on the phone after there was an issue with the heating that I was unable to fix myself, and he sent an engineer around the next day to fix the boiler. Come the time that the job was finishing, I went round to the pawn shop that he owned to give him notice that I would be moving out the following month, and to let him know that I was happy for him to come around to inspect the house before I moved out so that I could get my deposit back from him when I returned the keys. He never came around while I was in to inspect the house, and so I assumed that he had come around and let himself in while I was at work, as I had told him that I had no issue with him doing that if need be. So on the day I moved out, I went around the shop and handed him his keys back and asked for my deposit. His response was, "What deposit?" "The month's rent that I gave you in advance of moving in as a security deposit," I replied. He then told me he was keeping that to cover the cost of repairing damages caused while I was living in the property. I responded, "What damages?" With the bits of work and decorating I had done on the house, it was in a better state now than when I've moved into it. His response was to step forward and get right up into my face and say, "You're not getting it back, so get lost," and he then gave me a shove, which needed me to take 3 steps back to avoid falling on my back. Now I am what you would class as an average size and build, and this landlord had a good 4 inches on me height. Wise and obviously spent some time down the gym, and the wise move would be to back away and cut my losses. Now, before I was a builder, I was a member of the British Army in a regiment called the Royal Green Jackets, and they had trained us that the best way to proceed when confronted with aggression is to meet it swiftly and with much more violent aggression. So without even thinking about it, I started to move forward with the full intention of dropping this jerk quickly and painfully. After the first step, a thought popped into my head like a bolt from the blue. So I stopped and took a moment to examine the idea from a few different angles, said goodbye to my now ex-landlord, and walked out of his shop. What the landlord did not know was that I had had a spare backdoor key cut when I had lived in the house, which I had stashed in my van in case I ever lost the key so I could still get back in. So later that evening, I let myself back in and decided to stop for one last night before leaving in the morning for my next job, which was in Scotland. I spent the last night in the house carefully removing every bit of wood in there. I took down doors, removed skirting boards, banisters, architrave, and floorboards, being extremely careful not to damage anything. I also completely dismantled all the kitchen units, took up the wood floor and carpets. I then left everything in nice, neat piles in each room. I got in my van the next morning and was preparing to start my drive when I decided I wanted to rub a little more salt into my ex-landlord's wounds. So I stopped at his shop on the way out of London, got a spare hammer, screwdriver, bag of nails, and box of wood screws out of the back of my van and went into the shop. My ex-landlord was not there, probably for the best. So I left the tools with his confused-looking assistant and told her to tell her boss, "You will be needing these," and left for my drive north. I had my phone switched off while driving, and a few hours later, while I was having a bite to eat in a service station up by Nottingham, I decided to switch it back on and was greeted by a string of text messages and some very colorful voice messages which left me chuckling to myself. I did reply to one of the texts he sent me. The text was, "Do you think you're funny, leaving me nails and screws?" I responded yes, and with that, I went on to my next job. This happened sometime in 2014. When I was in grad school, I got a job at an department office that ordered and maintained testing supplies. I started off at the bottom of the ladder but was willing to learn more. By my second year in the program, I was placed as the manager and given a 75-cent raise. Whoa, the work wasn't too difficult. I was responsible for taking requests from professors, getting price quotes from the companies, getting the price quotes approved, and placing orders. There were some other duties, but that was the most difficult stuff I ever really dealt with. Occasionally, I'd have to deal with our ordering department when they screwed up an order. I reorganized the office in a more efficient manner and created multiple new systems for dealing with issues. I practically ran that place for several years, and it ran well most of the time. During that time, we hired a bunch of new employees. They just wanted an easy job, but my boss wouldn't take my recommendations on who to hire. In my 4th year in the program, I was asked to order some test kits by one of the program heads. The test kits were related, and I found out that they could be ordered as a combo kit that would save us space, but cost a little more. We were low on space, and so I figured it would be worth it. I got the price quote and got it approved by the program head and then the department head. I placed the order. When the kids arrived, the program head was thrilled with the combined kits and thought they were fantastic. Several weeks later, my boss informed me that I shouldn't have ordered the combined kits, that they'd emptied the program's budget, and that the program head would never have approved them if she'd known. Luckily for me, I had the emails of me sending her the price quote with both price per unit and total cost and her approving them. My boss was rather stunned that the program had lied, but insisted that I take the fall for it. She told me that I could either take a demotion or quit. I'm pretty sure she thought I'd take the demotion, but I quit instead. Joke was on her. None of the other employees were willing to do much, and all had refused to be trained on ordering. The joke around the program was that the office I had managed burned down after I left. It was in complete chaos for months as my boss, who had a lot of other responsibilities, had to figure out how to do the ordering and many other things that I did single-handedly.